Okay, guys, so we're back. It's Tregs here. We are going to attempt this. All right, so we're going to attempt this for a second time. All right, so I'm joined by Ray Martin here, author of Life Without a Tie. What we need from you before we start, kind of like getting into full swing, is we need you to tell us what the sound is like. Okay, that would be amazing. So, Ray, do you want to introduce yourself? And listen, this is either going to work or it ain't going to work. It's as simple as that. But we'll see how we get on. So, Ray, once again, how you doing, bud? You good?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. And I'm just keen to hear if your listeners can hear me okay
All right, cool.
and whether they say
Yeah,
the
no
sound
worries.
is all right.
Okay, so guys, let us know how it's
Is the sound all right, guys? Am I coming through your ears in a natural, normal way? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, let's have a little look. Here we go. Right, okay.
Can they
All
hear?
is good. Oi, hey,
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 woo!
woo! Let's wreck the place.
Fantastic.
All right. Okay, wicked, sorted. Right, let's get into it. Let's get into it. So,
All
guys,
right, dude.
it's Coach Tregs here, the founder of 30 Plus Men's Fitness. Once again, I am back with my live guest, going to commit to bringing you one live guest once a month. And I'm very proud to be joined. And hopefully, his sound is going to be perfect because I know mine is perfect. We're going to make it happen. We had positive thoughts by Ray Martin. Ray is the author of Life Without a Tie. Ray's in his 60s. He quit the corporate world many years ago, went on this whole spiritual journey, ended up getting into marathon running. He's ran 5 marathons. He's raised loads of money for charity. And he joins me here tonight. And we're going to get into it properly right now, aren't we, Ray? So let's do this.
Okay,
Good
what do
to,
you want to know?
good to, well, I think we start again because I've deleted everything else. Let's just start again, buddy. Let's start from the beginning, my friend.
I think you asked me about a bit of backdrop to my life, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah.
And so when I was a young man, my vision or my dream, I suppose, was to become a successful and respected and admired businessman.
Okay.
So that's the vision that I pursued, with all my might. I worked really, really hard. I applied myself. I worked in sales and in consulting and all sorts of jobs to learn all the skills I needed to eventually start my own business, which I did at the age of 34. But up to that point, I'd been employed in corporate organizations, learning about sales, marketing, business development, contracting, all those sorts of things.
Yeah,
Worked in with a lot of banks, insurance companies, and all the big sort of corporate entities that we all know.
yeah,
So I was very familiar with the corporate world and very much a part of it. And then I left to start my own organization because I figured that being free, which was really my goal in life, was to earn enough money to be free.
love that.
That was always my goal, even as a child. When I was at school and I was 11 years old,
Yeah,
I used to say to my schoolmates, don't you think it's really stupid that people retire when they're 65 or 70 and then they live about 3 or 4 years and then they die? It just didn't make any sense to me
yeah,
as an 11-year-old.
yeah.
And my friends weren't even thinking about that. And I said to them, they said to me, so what are you going to do, Ray, then, like you smart ass? What are you going to do? I said, well, I'm just going to work half my life and try and earn twice as much money
Love it.
so that I can live half of my life when I'm older without needing to work. That's pretty much how it's turned out. And so in the corporate world, I thought I've got to start my own business. So I left where I was working with a woman who was my girlfriend, and we had a vision to start this business I
Yeah,
started. And we became engaged and married after the business started. And so we were a husband and wife management team. And for 7 or 8 years, we built this business up really successfully.
wow.
And I became Business Leader of the Year, the award from the Daily Telegraph in 2002. And it was like I reached the top of the mountain. I was, by all accounts, in everyone's eyes, Mr. Successful. But to be honest, Mark, even though all that was true, inside myself, I wasn't happy. I felt like I was living the wrong life or someone else's life. I was never really truly happy in that life. I didn't feel in my element. It took a lot of effort. I was tired, exhausted, sort of feeling slightly burnt out on it. I just didn't enjoy it. And then one day, my wife, who was my business partner, came back from a meeting and said, do you know what? I'm out of here. I'm quitting. I'm leaving you and I'm leaving the company. It was very
Wow,
sudden.
wow. Did you have any indication that was coming or what?
No, I didn't see it coming, and that was part of the shock for me, was that I'd been quite awake to my own intuitive wisdom,
Sure.
but in that period of my life, I kind of lost touch with it completely. I was very focused on material gain and results, and I'd sort of lost sense of that inner voice that always used to speak to me. And so I didn't see it coming, and it was a massive shock. My father got very ill at the same time, and he passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
So within about 2 or 3 months, I was kind of out of my company, out of my marriage, out of my home, and my dad had passed away, and I was lost. It felt like standing in a sort of bomb crater, surveying the rubble of my life. I was just completely collapsed.
How old were you at the time, Ray?
I was 43 when this happened.
Okay, so let me just stop you there. Up until this moment, okay, what had been your kind of like, what had you done kind of like fitness, running, exercise-wise, or was it all just completely career focused for you?
Yeah, I'd done virtually nothing fitness-wise. Only in my 30s, I played five-a-side football and did a bit of exercise like that. But in my mid to late 30s and early 40s, I did no exercise. I was too busy. And I was overweight. You know, I was like a stone or two overweight. I've got a picture of me from 43 sitting in the garden with my dad. And we looked like twin brothers rather than father and son. That's how crap I looked. Really bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So she left, and that left me wondering what the hell to do. And after a few months of paralysis, some good friends of mine said, why don't you go on a 6-month sabbatical? Why don't you take a break from your life and just go somewhere, do something different, go get a different perspective on life, get a new view.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite a good idea. And so I sold my house in London, which meant I had to either sell or give away all the stuff in it because I didn't want to store it. So I collapsed my life and minimalized it down to a bag of clothes and a laptop. And I just got rid of everything I'd accumulated up to that point, just to sort of have a zero start again. I've described all of this in the book in much more detail.
Yeah, sure.
And then I left England to go traveling with a girl I'd met in London to Thailand initially, but we were going to go all over Asia. And I thought I'd be going for 6 months and coming back and starting a new business and getting a new flat or house and starting all over again. That's what happened. That's not how it turned out, but that's what I left with, that plan.
Okay. So you headed to Thailand.
Yeah, I did. Started traveling.
Yeah.
Started living a completely anonymous life with no goals, no targets, no meetings, no obligations, no deadlines, nothing. It was really weird.
And so you'd sold your business, so you were okay financially to go and
actually no,
do
I'd
this.
stopped.
Yeah.
I'd stopped operating the business, but I didn't sell it until 3 years later. In 2008, I sold the business.
Right.
I had some people sort of looking after it for me while I was traveling.
Okay, and so what happened when you were out in Thailand?
So then I was in all these lovely places, on all these paradise beaches and coffee shops, etc. On the surface, it looked fantastic, but inside my mind, I was in turmoil. I was scared. I was worried about the future. I felt lots of feelings to do with shame and guilt about what a failure as a husband I'd been, how I'd let everyone down, how I hadn't cut it, how I'd sort of seemed successful but wasn't really, and my life had fallen apart. I had lots of guilt and shame about that. And it was really spoiling my life because it was I couldn't stop having these dark, depressing thoughts about it. And then one day I met a traveller 6 months in who said, why don't you do a Vipassana retreat? And I said, what's a Vipassana retreat? I have never heard of it. And he said, oh, you go into a monastery for 10 days and you with Buddhist monks and you do 10 days of silent meditation.
Wow.
And I laughed because I'd never even been quiet for 10 minutes. 10 days.
Yeah.
But I took his advice and I signed up for this meditation program, and I did it, Mark, and it was like a life changer.
Wow.
It completely and utterly blew my mind. Got up at 4 a.m. every day in silence, did yoga for an hour and a half, and then sat and did meditation on and off for like 7 or 8 hours, in silence every single day. And when I left that place, I was like so calm and in such a state of equanimity. Everything looked different after that.
So what's that like, being at a silent retreat and having to sit with your own thoughts for that period of time every day?
Yeah, well, for me, what it was like was it was massively illuminating and educational, because I saw how devious my own mind is, and I saw how much it dominates the way I make decisions, the thoughts I have, the beliefs I hold. And I also saw that, because part of the experience of being in the monastery is that you get 1 hour a day where a monk will give you a talk where you're not allowed to speak, but they speak. So they're kind of explaining a Buddhist concept. And the one that sort of sat with me the most was the Buddhist concept of craving and desire, and how that leads to all of our anxiety. Because in the West, we're not used to feeling a lot of uncomfortable emotions. We don't like it. You know, we seek to stay in a state of pleasant feelingness as much as we can. And so we crave either people or experiences or products or things that we think, if I just have that, I'll be happy. Like, I'll be happy when I get a new girlfriend, or I'll be happy if I get a new job, or when I get a pay rise, I'll be happy, or when I move to a new house, I'll be happy then, I'll be happy then. And we're always wanting something to bring our happiness that's outside of us.
Destination happiness, buddy.
Yeah, and then we bring that thing comes from the outside, we get it, for a while we are happy, but then we realize we want something else, and that wears off, and then the craving cycle starts again, and it's a never-ending cycle. And I realized as I sat in that monastery for 10 days that really my work was to go the other way from most people and really look into why I even had those cravings, and just stop having the cravings. Just give up or let go of being attached to wanting things, because then there's no, if you're going into every day of your life going, I don't mind what happens today, then anything can happen, you'll be okay. But if you say, today I really want this particular outcome to happen, and it doesn't happen, you're going to be unhappy. So this was a really big reorientation for me. It wasn't instant. I did have to practice this a lot for a couple of years afterwards, but it was a massive reorientation in my thinking. And I'd started looking at life completely through a different lens after that. And I've written a whole chapter in the book about that retreat and how it changed my thinking. So it's quite hard to convey in a couple of minutes.
And you'd never meditated before?
Never, no.
Isn't that so interesting? Because like, we're all kind of like, life is so crazy right now. We're all we're all so digitally distracted. I read something the other day that, you know, the reason like really short reels work on social media is because people can only, you know, concentrate for like between sort of 10 and 15 seconds. It's absolutely frightening, and you're not going to change it. It's the way the world is going, etc. But the really interesting thing is about meditation. I'm going actually away next weekend on a meditation course for 2 days, and there's some cold water therapy thrown in as well. But I've tried meditation, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't stuck at it religiously. I'm enjoying getting in the cold water at the minute and the cold sea, and that's been amazing for me. But here's the interesting thing. It takes a little bit of time to quieten the mind. And most people will sit there and go, no, it's not working for me. They'll give it 2 minutes and they'll go, it's not working. And I remember a friend of mine, Paul Moore, who's a very successful life coach. He's as hyper as me, and he started to talk about meditation. And I thought, well, if this guy can quieten his mind, then so can I. And he actually said that, you know, most people do not give it time. They sit in the room and they're like, you know, and then they're off and they don't give it time. When actually, you know, you just got to go with it and just let your mind kind of drift off and get your breaths right. And after a while, you're in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's exactly the same as learning something like the skateboard. You know, if you've never ever been on a skateboard, you can't expect to just jump on it, go along, and then flip the thing over and do a somersault and land on it again.
Yeah.
That's going to take you several months of practicing over and over again until you get the feel for it. And meditation's exactly the same. You know, you've got to stay committed to it, because it's the repetition of it over and over again that brings you more feel and comfort in doing it.
Yeah.
It's the repetition that's the important part, not just doing it once.
And I think that, you know, we're like I said, we're so rushed. We're just running around. We never actually get time to sit with our thoughts.
Yeah.
And just be.
Yeah, exactly.
And I expect that can be very uncomfortable for some people. because
I
you
think
actually
so.
so here's an interesting thing. I always talk about this. All human behavior is driven by a desire to change your state. James Clear talks about that in his book Atomic Habits.
He does,
And a
yeah.
lot of my clients, like, I'll get messages from them. They go, Tregs, I've had a shit day at work. I'm going to go home and I'm going to smash beers. I'm going to have one. I'm like, whoa, listen. Remember this. There are other ways to change your state, right? We're looking for instant gratification to change our state. So it's like, oh, this meditation, it's not working for me. So I'll go back to my phone and I'll get the dopamine from that. Or I've had a shit day, so I'm going to go have the beers. And then, the next day you're full of, it's just this perpetual cycle. Whereas actually just go, just take a breath. Just chill. For me, recently, it's been going and diving in the sea. That is a fucking amazing state changer, by the way. That is incredible for changing state. But do you think that with meditation, people are they get very uncomfortable? I mean, was it uncomfortable for you to sit with your own thoughts?
In that first 10 days, in that first 10 days it was, because for a start it was physically uncomfortable. Sitting cross-legged for 2 or 3 hours is hard, it's even with cushions and stuff, it still starts to hurt.
Yeah.
So I wasn't used to it, so it was uncomfortable. I've been on a few meditation retreats since then over the years, and it's easier for me because I'm more used to it, a bit more flexible.
Yeah.
But in that early stage, it was uncomfortable. Yeah, and I used to get distracted a lot.
But you, during that 10 days, you had an awakening, right?
Yeah, I did.
You just changed. You became a different person.
For a while, I calmed right down and let go of a lot of fear and anxiety and stress about the future. Because one of the things that's a very central tenet to mindfulness, let's say, is what is presence, is being in the moment you're in. Because if you think about your own life, we're rarely in a situation where we're physically in our body and in our thoughts in the same place at the same time. You are right now because your body is there,
totally,
and your attention and awareness is on me and you having this conversation. So right now you're 100% together in yourself with your thoughts. But most of us, if we go to the bank or we go to the supermarket, we're physically in the supermarket, but our thoughts are like back at home or at work or somewhere else. Our thinking and our bodies are always in two completely different places. That's not being present. So we miss a lot of what's going on around us. Yeah.
And okay, so what were your main kind of take homes from that retreat with the 10 days of meditation? What was the biggest take home when you went about your business? And
well, I used those. I shaped up 10 sort of guiding principles, which I've listed in the book, and some of them were non-attachment was one of them. I decided that from that point on, I was just going to let life flow and allow it to direct me as to what outcomes would be good, and not be attached in any way to trying to make things happen like I used to make things happen as a business leader or as a sales manager or whatever. You had goals and targets, you had to make them happen. I decided to be completely unattached to any particular outcomes and allow life to direct me. That was one. The second thing that I found really great after the retreat was I found myself in a place of being able to be in a state of self-acceptance. I'd given myself such a hard time, Mark, about my failure as a husband and crashing out of the business and the marriage and everything. I said, you know what, I'm just going to make a commitment here and now. If I find myself judging myself harshly, like a flatmate who would tell you every day, you're a wanker, you wouldn't want to live with a guy like that, would you? If that's all they did constantly, you kick them out. So I was like that towards myself.
Yeah, you've got to change the dialogue, right?
So I thought, whenever I'm hearing those self-judging thoughts, I'm just going to stop and change the narrative and say, actually, Ray, you're doing really okay. You're doing the best you can. You're on your way to becoming a great person. And so I made that commitment for a month. As just as purely as an experiment to see how I'd get on with it. But that was a game changer for me.
So when you come out of this silent retreat, what happened then? Because obviously we've not even got into how you got into marathon running. So let's keep this story moving. There has been a few questions, but we'll get to the questions at the end.
Okay, so I started to live much more mindfully. I then went to live in a town in Thailand called Chiang Mai for a few months. And I joined a group of people that met every week to meditate together. So I made some really mindful friends. And through those conversations with those mindful friends, I sort of realized that just purely traveling as a tourist for me wasn't meaningful enough. It wasn't purposeful enough. I had the time and I had some money to do it, but I felt like I was sort of wasting an opportunity by just being a tourist, because I was seeing things, Mark, that actually really touched my heart, and I thought I could help these. I could do something. For example, I went to this elephant sanctuary in the north of Thailand where they were rescuing elephants that had been blown up by landmines or they'd been badly treated. They were put into a really lovely nature reserve and giving them a real life, you know. And I also went to the Himalayas and went to an orphanage in Nepal, in Pokhara, Nepal, and organised a picnic for about 60 kids for like $20, and it changed their life, these 60 children.
Brilliant.
And I thought, when I was doing these things, I was thinking, God, if I was here all the time, I could do so much more.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking, how could I raise some money for things like this? What could I do? I've got business skills. I know how to apply myself in the business world. How can I use all that to raise money for people that don't have a voice or causes like this? And as I was thinking about that one day, thinking, what could I do? I bumped into a guy who was living there with his wife. And I said, what do you do? And he said, I'm a software engineer or something like that. I said, what do you do outside of work? He said, I'm a marathon runner. And I said, oh. He was about 10 years younger than me. He said, yeah, I've run 6 marathons. I really love it. And he was fit and healthy. And I said to him, Matt, his name's Matt, do you think I could run a marathon? Because I'm trying to think of something I can do to raise money for these things. He looked at me and he said, well, have you ever run before? I said, no. He said, well, you look pretty fit. I mean,
love it.
He said, I'll do a deal with you. I said, what's that? He said, if you stay in this town for 6 months, live near to me, I'll put a marathon training program together for you and I'll coach you and train you to run a marathon. I said, okay, it's a deal.
And you were mid-40s at the time?
No, I was nearly 50,
wow.
49.
Love this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what happened.
And
so then we started training in April of 2009, and I chose about 2 years earlier, I'd been on a trip to New York City with a friend, walking around New York, and it was on the weekend of the New York Marathon. I didn't know that. That was pure coincidence.
Sure.
This was in 2007. And Paula Radcliffe was running at that time, and she was the world record holder for the women's race.
Yeah.
And we were both British. And so we said, let's go and watch Paula Radcliffe cross the line. So we went into Central Park, and we watched Paula Radcliffe come into the home straight and run the last bit, and we were cheering her on.
Amazing.
And I said to my friend Angie, her name is, I said, Angie, if I ever run a marathon, and I don't think I will, but if I ever did run a marathon, I'm going to run it in New York. That would be my dream. It'd have to be here. This would be brilliant. And then I forgot. I said that. I just completely forgot.
Sure.
But 2 years later, when I met Matt and he said, I want you to choose a marathon to run in, I thought, oh, what about New York? So I found out I was still in time for the ballot. I put my name in the hat. And do you know what? First time I got a place in the ballot. I wasn't expecting it, but I did.
Wow.
Because I think when you live in alignment and when you're living according to a purpose that's meaningful, and when you start lining your life up in that way, magic happens.
Universe
it just
delivers,
happens.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky, and I got a place to run in the New York Marathon, 1st of November 2009.
Wow.
So then Matt obviously said to me, do you have a goal around running a time? And so I went online and started reading all these blogs and articles about what sort of time do people run marathons in at my age. And I came to the conclusion, to cut a long story short, that running a marathon in under 4 hours was the holy grail for any new marathon runner. Well, it certainly felt that way.
Yeah.
And so I said to Matt, well, I want to run a marathon in under 4 hours. And he said, okay, we're going to train you for that, but we're going to need to do some time trials. And I'm not sure if you're fit enough, but we'll see. And so in the end, we decided I did a couple of half marathons in just around 2 hours each. So I set that goal. But then about 5 weeks before the New York Marathon, when I was at my peak fitness almost, I tore a calf muscle in my right leg. And I thought, bloody hell, that's such a bummer. I didn't even know if I'd get recovered to run the race. But I did recover it with ice and rest and physio and ultrasound and all the things I did.
Wow.
And I ended up running the marathon in 4 hours and 16 minutes.
And did it hold up okay?
It did hold up okay. So I finished in 4 hours 16, and I thought, I'm not satisfied with that. I need to do another marathon to run it in under 4 hours. So I kept going, and every time I ran a marathon, I used it to raise more money. So it was good in a way.
So let's list off all the marathons you've done and over what period of time, and the money that you've raised, and for what charity,
Yeah.
and why.
So New York was the first one. The second one I did was in Phuket in Thailand, which is the biggest marathon in Thailand.
In that heat?
Yeah, well, they start at 4 a.m. these races.
I've heard this. I've got a client that, in Vietnam, similar, Yeah,
they start really early. That wasn't a great race for me. I had training issues. My training didn't go well at all. I ran that in just over 5 hours. It was appalling. The third one I ran was in London. I got a place in the London Marathon in 2014.
Yeah.
And there's a miracle story here. If I got time to tell
it? Push up, buddy. Yeah, I'm just sharing it to a few more groups. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So I started my 14 weeks of endurance training, which is the first phase of my training, and then I go to speed and strength later, and then I combine it all up. So in the first 14 weeks, 7 weeks in, I tore the left calf muscle. So I had to stop my training. I literally couldn't run. And I knew this guy in Chiang Mai, a doctor from Boulder, Colorado, who was in his 60s, lovely guy. And he was doing acupuncture treatments on my leg every day to try and heal it more quickly so I could get back to training. And he knew how much it meant to me and how disappointed I was that I was going to run the London Marathon in my home country and not possibly do a sub 4 hour time. And so he said to me, Ray, I've got this friend who's a really good running coach in Colorado. Her name's Lorraine. He said, maybe she could help you if you can get back to training. Maybe she can help you recover some of your lost fitness by maybe changing your training or something. Do you want me to connect you with her? So I thought to myself, yeah, that's never going to work. What would she know? She won't be able to help. I said, okay, go for it. So he did. And she reached out to me and we spoke on Skype. And she said, Ray, I think you've got a chance here. I'm going to suggest a training plan to you. And I'll send it over and I'll show it to you. And she sent it over to me, and I had the audacity, I suppose, to question it and say, there's no long runs in here. There's nothing over 15 miles or anything. Are you sure this is right? Now, I didn't know this when I had that conversation. It turned out that this woman was Lorraine Muller. And if you look her up, she's one of the most successful female marathon runners of all time. And she won bronze medal in the Barcelona Olympics.
Brilliant, mate.
She was trained by Arthur Lydiard.
Yeah.
He was a really famous running trainer. He trained a lot of the Finns in the 80s.
Sure.
And she was trained by him. She was a top class athlete. And she told me, Ray, trust me, I know what I'm doing. Just follow my instructions. So I followed her training plan to the letter. It was completely alien to my way of training. And when I ran the race, she said, I want you to run a negative split. And I said, what's that? She said, I want you to consciously run the first half slower than the second half. I said, that doesn't make any sense, Lorraine. I'll be knackered by the halfway mark.
Yeah.
She said, no, trust me, just do it. Your body's going to warm up and stuff. So I did all of that, and despite having torn the calf muscle, I ran that race in 4 hours and 7 minutes.
Wow.
Because I followed her training method, and I thought, wow, if I do this in the next marathon and I don't get injured, and I just completely stick with her method, I'm going to smash the 4 hours. I know it. I just knew it. So the next marathon, the fourth one, I did in Warsaw in 2015, Warsaw, Poland, because I was living there. And I did that finally in 3 hours and 56 minutes. And it was 6 years after the first one. I was now 54.
Wow.
So I'd gone from 49 to 54 and improved my speed and fitness way beyond the beginning.
Yeah. Wow.
And in total, for all of those marathons put together, I raised about $35,000.
And where did that money? What charities were those for?
Yeah, so the first one I split it 3 ways. The Elephant Nature Park in Thailand got a new shelter. The orphanage in Nepal got a new motorbike, some computers, a new roof on one of the buildings, some clothes and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I went out there with the money in my hand, and I did it all myself on the ground. I didn't send the money. I actually went back myself. And the third money went to the World Cancer Research Fund because a good friend of mine had died from cancer in London, and I really wanted to honour her death.
Yeah.
So that's the first lot. And then the second lot of money went to a thing called Schools of Hope, which is a Thai-Burmese border school that gives Burmese refugees an education so they can get into a school in Thailand.
How has that felt, being able to give back throughout this kind of whole journey?
Just incredible, absolutely amazing. Really feels deeply nourishing to my soul to do that sort of stuff.
I think,
and all of this I've written up in detail in the book.
I know you're extremely spiritual because you did the you went to the Buddhist retreat, and you know I had a sort of spiritual awakening probably back in 2008 now, when I was handed a book called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
And that changed things, not immediately, but it did eventually, and then it took me on this whole journey of kind of self-discovery and self-development, and it's just I put it down to where it's gotten me today, and it's so nice to be able to kind of pass that message on to my lads who are 10 and 8 now.
Brilliant.
Because it wasn't until 27 that I actually learned the way that the universe works, and it's in the Bible. If you give, you receive. Simple as that. And you don't give to because you think, oh, I'll get back. You do it out of the generosity of your own heart because you want to give, and it just always comes back. And one thing I've always said to my boys is, it may not necessarily come back from that person, but it always comes back. The universe is incredible, and you talk about. I want to kind of go off on a little bit of a spiritual tangent because I talk about this a lot now with my inner circle clients because for me, I'm a health and fitness guy, but I know that health and fitness is one thing, but when you get your health and fitness on side, you've got a clearer mind and all that. You're more receptive to this stuff. And this can really change your life. And I always say there's a couple of things you can do. You can start every day with being grateful. Now, everyone's got something to be grateful for, but it's very difficult to wake up every day and be grateful if you feel like a bag of shit. So, I could say to a client, right, we're going to do an experiment, right? We're going to, they might be like, feeling like, what's all this gratitude rubbish? Go, right, okay, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. For the next 2 weeks, we're going to get to bed early. We're going to do... we're going to drink 3 to 4 liters of water a day. We're going to do some meditation. We're going to give you really healthy food. We're going to exercise. We're going to do cold sea dips. But every morning when you get up, you're going to list 10 things you're grateful for. That person would start to find that easier because they're in a better energy, better vibration. But if you say to somebody, right, but we're going to try and be grateful, but every night you're going to stay up and you're going to drink beers, you're going to eat pizza, you're going to scroll social media, want to get into arguments with people on social media, you're going to watch shite. It's hard to do that. So this whole thing you say about alignment, I absolutely love that. Because when you live in alignment with your message, and when you're grateful,
and your own values as well,
and when you're grateful, and when you give, and you give with a good heart, that is the key. People will say, oh, why are you giving money to that homeless person? They're only going to go and spend it on alcohol and drugs. And I'm like, look, I'm giving them out the goodness of my own heart. If they want to go and do that, that's down to them. But I'm not going to judge. I give with a loving heart, and then it comes back to you. And I bet you've experienced.
That's the law of reciprocity.
That's it, buddy.
Is very well described in quite a few books on the topic.
Yeah, and I bet your life has probably. There's been so many things that have happened to you due to your good nature and the kind of the money that you've raised for charities as well, right? Doors have opened.
Not just that, but I mean, even the fact that I'm on this show with you. Is because a guy I helped and really supported to learn, a guy called Ben Moss.
Yeah, that's it.
Recommended me to you, so he gave me the kindness back.
Yeah. It really is interesting when you start to break down the way that this whole kind of world works, because I love what you said there. You've just listed off a whole heap of charities that you've raised money for. And guess what, buddy? There's millions of people like you doing good things every day.
Yeah.
It doesn't go unheard of. And we start to talk about like the corporate media and the news stations and stuff like that. They will have you that this world is just a shit place. And yes, there are bad things going on in this world, but there's also millions and millions of great people going about their day doing wonderful things and giving money.
That's true.
But of course, that doesn't sell. We
don't control the TV companies.
We need to keep people miserable. We need to keep people down. We need to keep bickering with each other. And I try and say to my boys, listen, we don't have the news on in our house, but it's just open up your mind beyond that. There's so much good going on in this world, right? Definitely. Yes, there's bad. Of course there's bad, but there's also a lot of good. And if you can be a good person and you can help others, then, life's going to do you okay. I never wake up every morning and go, how can I earn this today? How can I earn that? I wake up every day and I think, how can I add value? How can I add value today to somebody's life?
Yeah.
How can I do that? Because if I can add value and I can change somebody's life and give them, a better experience of life, then that's just gonna come back to me and my family. It's as simple as that. Would you agree?
Well, yeah. I mean, and what you're saying is very much what I say. I'm a leadership coach, so I coach people all the time in the business world for my work. And so it's a bit like being a good athlete. If you want to be a really powerful athlete, you must dedicate some time to building your core strength. Without that, you can't train properly, you can't sustain high performance. And it's the same as a leader. If you're a leader of people, and I would contest that everyone's a leader, it's not just people at work, because if there's a fire in a house in your street, someone's got to step up and calm everyone down. You can be a leader anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So if your core strength as a leader is how much awareness do you have of what your values are?
Yeah.
How well do you know what your limiting beliefs are?
Yeah, limiting beliefs.
What is your purpose in life? What are you here to do?
Yeah.
And what's your vision to keep improving your life? Those are all core strength activities. So if you're not spending any time reflecting on those, defining those, you're not working on your core strength as a human being.
Yeah. Something that you said earlier really resonated with me, because I think that a lot of people are very stuck and they don't believe that they can kind of break free from whatever they're doing. But you were saying that you used to get this kind of feeling inside that there was kind of more. There's more to it, and it's almost like your inner being is like is saying to you, it's telling you, no, there's something more. You were put here to do more than what you're doing now, and that's why you said even though you're in this kind of corporate world, you weren't fulfilled. I spoke to a guy on my podcast last year, a guy called Dean Karnassis. He calls himself the Ultra Marathon Man. He's got some fantastic books out. The first book I ever read from him was incredible. And he talked about, he's an American chap. He had it all going on, great career in sales, lovely kids, lovely wife, good corporate pension, all that kind of stuff going on. And I think it was on his 30th, he went out for drinks to a bar with his friends. He was just in there drinking. He was just like looking around going, no, this isn't for me. And his story is he put the drink down and he just went out into the street and he just started running.
Like Forrest Gump.
Started running. And then at like 4 a.m, he's ringing his wife, where are you? And he's like, I'm like 40 miles from home or 30 miles from home. Trying to pick him up. And that was it. He just had this moment. People might say it's a midlife crisis, whatever it is, an awakening. And it just took him on this whole thing of, getting into ultramarathon running. He's world famous.
I hear you.
And I remember before I became a personal trainer, and I used to be in events. I used to be a nightclub promoter many years ago, and then I was kind of going in between stuff, and I used to sit and I'd see stuff on telly of like I'd be watching like fitness or like dancers, and there'd be like some kind of fire in my belly, but almost like a bit of resentment because they were living. I'd see these other people's living this life, and I wasn't doing that, and it was weird. It used to niggle at me all the time, right? And then one day I was doing a 10K run in Landa Fields, and I had this kind of eureka moment. It was a beautiful day. It was the middle of February, but the sun was out, and I was running, and I hadn't done a race in 8 months.
Amazing.
And I just got this. It said you're going to be a personal trainer, and I remember going home and telling my partner at the time.
Yeah.
And she was relieved because I'd been depressed for years. She was just like, kind of like, get on with it. Sign up to the course. And it gave me direction. But some of my close friends were like, no, well, so-and-so tried that, and it didn't really work for them. So, and I was just like, because I'd found it. It was like, this is what I'm going to do. I don't give a shit that I used to be a nightclub promoter. I'm going to do this. And I could really feel it was bubbling up inside me for years. Just something going like, you can do more, you can do more, you can do more. And I think that when we sit with it and when we meditate and we take quiet time, that's when we can really get.
Yeah, or we don't resist the changes that life is pushing our way because they're happening for a reason. Yeah, I've got. Did you ever hear Ben's story? Ben Moss's story.
Tell me.
It's brilliant.
Tell me.
It's fantastic. I mean, you must get him to tell you, because he's got 2 autistic boys, and he wanted to find a swimming class for autistic boys. Because it's run in a special way. So he went down to these swimming baths wherever he lives, and there was an instructor there, a teacher who could handle that, who could handle swimming for autistic boys.
Wow.
And one day he'd been going there for several weeks, and one day he saw the teacher was like having a break, and he went over to him just to say hello and find out a bit more about his background. And he said, I thought he would say something like, oh, I was an Olympic swimmer for the British team, and then I got too old, and then I decided to do this, or something like that. He said, how did you come to be an autistic swimming teacher? You know, the guy said, do you know what? He said, he just used to work as a logistics manager for DHL or something. I did that for years, and it was all right, but I was never really alive doing that. And my boy was autistic, and I was looking for a class I could put him in, and I looked all over the county, and there was no class. So he said, so I decided to go and train myself as a swim instructor so I could take my own boy swimming.
Amazing.
And he said, I discovered in the process that I loved being in the water. I loved swimming. I thought, I found my passion, my element, my purpose.
Amazing.
I discovered it. And he said, now I just do swim lessons and classes all over the place. And I'm writing a book about swimming. I'm making films about swimming.
Yep.
And now I'm a swim instructor. You know, that's what I do.
Yeah. You know, this is something I say to my clients once they've got their health and fitness dialed in. Just open your mind to like what is possible. Open your mind. You know, the norm will tell you that, you know, it's all bleak out there and there's no opportunities and that. But you've just got to tune in. You've got to tune into a different channel, man. There is, you know, that there's so many opportunities out, and you create it yourself. And when you actually start to go looking, there's a whole plethora. There's a whole different world that opens up to you. You know, I went home, 2006, decided I'm going to be a personal trainer. I go onto Google, find a course, and then off you go. And people tend to put these kind of they put these kind of like invisible barriers. Oh, can't do.
Yeah.
We revert back to being cautious, or no, can't do that. I see it now in people around me. Hey, you try and be spontaneous. Oh, no, I can't. No. It's like, yo, come on, let's have some spontaneity. Let's think outside of the box, you know.
But those barriers do feel real for people. They are invisible, but they are felt as real things. And you know what? I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Mark. Have you ever been through like a big department store where you go through one area and there's music or sound playing, and then there's another area where there's different music or sound playing, and you're caught in the two sounds blasting out, and it's horrible. It's like cognitive dissonance. It gives you a bit of a headache. You can't hear two different sounds together. And this is what it's like in my experience. This is why the meditation or being quiet is so important, because you can only hear this inner voice we keep talking about if you turn the volume down on the other sound. If you try and hear that without removing the other source of sound from social media and TV and all those other things, you just can't hear your inner voice. You have to be willing to turn that off for a while. We're just going
around reacting to, it's just so busy, isn't it? And, it is literally about, but it's so hard to turn off as well. It's just like there's electronics everywhere, there's phones everywhere, there's just everything is everywhere. But look,
mankind has lived for thousands of years without those things, so I'm sure
you said in your book that you created was it 6 principles that
there's actually
10.
When I finished writing the story and I came home from the trip, my editors said, can you write an additional chapter to tell everyone what you learned? And I ended up writing what I call my 6 rules for happiness.
Let's hear them, buddy.
Yeah, so these are 6 things that are things I've committed myself to. And by the way, I must tell all your listeners, these are my 6 rules for my own happiness. Everyone's going to have their own individual version that are different for them.
Yep.
So I'm not selling this to the world as these are the things everyone will do. But for me, what makes me happy is the first rule is building a solid foundation, maintaining that core strength, having a conscious mind, having clarity about my values, constantly reflecting and refining my vision for myself, living every day and making choices and decisions that align with my values, those sorts of things. So that builds a solid foundation. Everything else gets taken care of when you build that foundation.
Yep.
So the first rule of happiness is build a solid foundation and get your core strength really right and maintain it. That's number 1. Is that clear?
Yep.
The second is, I call it fully own everything that happens. So many people are not taking ownership for what's going on in their life. They're making excuses. They're waiting and hoping. they're blaming other people or circumstances or the government or somebody or other. But at a certain point, I feel to be really happy, you have to go, I may not like it, but I am causing the conditions I'm in for some reason that I'm not really being honest with myself about.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have that radical self-honesty and start telling the truth about the prevailing conditions that are stopping you from doing stuff, and say, you know, for some reason I'm creating my life like this, why am I doing that? It's down to you. You know, always. You've got to fully own everything that happens. And I found myself that when I've moved into that place where I'm owning everything, like I had to fully own my wife wanting to leave me. I had to fully own the collapse of that life.
Yep.
I could have blamed her and said, I was brilliant, she was just stupid, she shouldn't have done it, blah, blah, blah. But I knew that wasn't true. I knew I'd caused it. I'd kind of caused her to want to go away from me. And I'd never looked deeply and said, what did I do over the last 10 years, or what did I not do or fail to do in that relationship that kind of drove her away?
Yeah.
And so I had to take ownership of that and then start addressing the things in me that I'd failed to do. Otherwise, I was going to do it again. So you've got to fully own everything that happens. Number 3, become your own observer. This is going to be sounding a bit strange perhaps to some people, but you know, in our bodies, when we walk around, we're having thoughts all the time, right? If you've got a voice in your head talking to you as I'm speaking right now, going, what's he talking about? That's your thoughts speaking to you. Your thoughts are narrated as a commentary. All thoughts are sounding like someone's saying them. It's your own voice. Now, the weird thing is, you can actually see yourself from a distance having those thoughts. You can observe yourself having the thoughts, in which case you're not actually in the thoughts. You're standing a little bit further away going, oh, that's interesting. I notice I'm thinking how pleasant it is to be on Mark's podcast right now. I notice I'm thinking about how I'm going to answer this question. I notice that. I'm aware of that. I'm aware I'm thinking. Now, that awareness, I call that the observer. Because if you're in a heated moment or in a difficult, challenging situation and things are happening, if you can step into that place of being your own observer, you're going to have a lot more options. You're going to be more calmer. You won't react so strongly. You just have a lot more options to be happy in those events if you can be your own observer. But it takes practice. I hope this is clear.
I love it. Loving it. Really enjoying it, mate. Yeah.
Number 4, and I think for me this has been a condition of happiness my entire life, is seek to create powerful, purposeful, and sustainable relationships. That means showing up in the spirit of what you can give and contribute and how you can support others and be valuable to others, and act with generosity, with kindness, with compassion. But fundamentally, life is a lot better if you've got a lot of people who you've got powerful, purposeful, and long-lasting relationships with, who love you, care about you, who are there for you when you need them. So how do you, this is a very important core strength to develop. Not taking people for granted, always being grateful, thanking people for the very small things they do that you might not notice, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 5 is paying attention to your health. And I realized this became a condition because when I started traveling, I got very badly injured in a fall on a hill.
Okay.
And I gashed my arm open and I didn't look after it properly at all. I didn't even think about it. And then I thought I'll go swimming in the ocean to the salt water will clean it up. And actually it was completely polluted bit of sea with sewage in it. And my arm swelled up to at least twice the size. And I was rushed into hospital and narrowly avoided an amputation.
Shit.
And I thought, wow, I really don't think a lot about my health, my physical health. And now I'm living this life without a tie and I'm moving around and traveling. My physical body has to be in really good condition all the time.
Yep.
I need to take responsibility for it. I need to own it. And not just my physical health, but my mental health, my spiritual health, my emotional health, everything.
Yep.
I've got to do work on myself
Absolutely.
to make sure that's optimized. That's number 5. And those are all about oneself. And number 6, I think you're definitely going to be happier if you do number 6, which is empowering and supporting other people to be the best they can be wherever you can.
Yeah.
If you have a part of your life that's dedicated to supporting and empowering others to be magnificent, you're always going to be happier. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. I can attest for that, mate. I try and do that every day with my clients, and I'm lucky I've not worked a day since I've got into the industry. I actually relish going to work every day, and I'm very blessed and very grateful to do that. And I think, everyone's got a purpose. It's just that not everyone's figured it out right yet. When you find your purpose, the energy raises. You don't seem to, I don't watch the clock. I just really enjoy it, and I truly believe that everyone has got a purpose, but they just need to figure out what that is, and their life will transform. Mate, this has been an amazing conversation. Show us the book and tell us where people can get it from, buddy.
Okay, here you go. Let me just put it up on the here. Life Without a Tie.
Yeah,
that's actually me on the cover, Mark. That was me walking towards Everest Base Camp in the Himalayas.
Amazing. And where can people get the book from?
On Amazon.
Yeah.
Do you want me to, maybe you can post the link on Facebook if I give it to you.
Yeah. Before we go, what advice would you give to anyone that hasn't run a marathon before and is planning on doing it?
If they're planning on doing it,
just
get a really good training program that you trust and follow it. Just do it. I say running a marathon's easy if you've done the training correctly.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah. If you've done the training, you've done it exactly as it's set out, and you've got 700 or 800 miles under your belt, and you've done the strength and the hills and the sprint work, so you've got the right pace. If you've done all the preparation, you'll run the marathon no trouble. It's really quite a doddle if you've done the training. Most people struggle because they skip the training or miss big chunks of it. So just don't do that. Just don't miss any out.
And one more question. What does the future entail for you, buddy? Because like you said, you're a bit of a nomad. You travel around, no real fixed abode. I know you're in sort of Stroud at the minute, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't know. I might not be staying here much longer. I don't know.
What's the plan? You don't know. Just go with the flow.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I don't know. But, I know what my work in the world is clear to me. My purpose is to be a torchbearer for greater human consciousness. And I do that in everything I do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to do that. I'm working with emerging leaders in all sorts of different organizations to support them to become the next generation of leaders that are going to lead the country and the companies that we have. Because I feel if I can help them become highly principled, highly, just really amazing leaders, we're going to have an amazing country, So that's what I'm doing, why I'm focused on that for now. And I intend to do a lot more work around workshops around the book and create some groups for men, maybe perhaps next year. I'm not sure yet.
Love it, mate. Absolutely love it. Ray, we said we were going to do 40 minutes. We've done almost 55. It's been fantastic. Guys, we're going to sign off now. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Ray, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for bearing with us, guys, with the sound. This is going to be uploaded to YouTube. If you follow us on YouTube, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe and all that. And also, I'll be getting this up to the podcast over the weekend. So, guys, I've been Coach Tregs. This has been Ray, author of Life Without a Tie. Hope you have a great Friday night, and we will talk to you very soon. Cheers, guys. Cheers, guys.